Welcome to the Alaska Autism Resource Center's Visual Strategies for Individuals with ASD and Related Disabilities. This is session 7 in a series of 10. Tonight we're going to take a look at transitions. So first of all, let's do some housekeeping before we begin. If this is the first time you've joined us and you're new to video desktop, there's a couple things that we'd like for you to do. If you notice at the top of your screen, there are 3 buttons that are highlighted in green, and we would like for you to click on the mic and the camera icons and shut them off. You'll see that they will turn to red when they're off. This prevents you from flashing your face onto the screen while the presentation is going on, and the microphone interfering and causing some feedback. Also, hope you had a chance to take your pretest. That is necessary to do before you can print out your templates and the handouts. And we have a list of materials here that we're going to need for tonight's hands-on project. So you're going to need a printer, cardstock, printing paper if you have it. If not, regular printing paper will work. Some scissors, glue stick or tape, and Velcro if you have that. We're going to be laminating, so if you have a laminator. If not, contact paper or even clear packing tape will work really well. And paper and pencil to jot some things down. I'd also like to remind people that the Alaska Autism Resource Center does have free material kits available that include all the materials you need to make the 10 projects that we make in this series. If you're interested in receiving one of these kits, please email me at lbaker@cesa.org. Again, that's lbaker@cesa.org. So let's get talking. Let's get started. Supporting transitions and communicating expectations. Well, perhaps the best opportunity to successfully transition, or that is change from one activity to another, or one place to another place, is when we know what to expect. This makes us a lot more successful. And expectations are everywhere, and they have a lot to do with how we act. Sometimes they are apparent and routine. For instance, if we go into a library, it's pretty much common knowledge that you keep your voice low, and if you need help finding a book, you find a librarian and you ask for help. And at other times, we just may not know what to expect from a situation. For instance, being required to attend the first meeting with new coworkers and not knowing anyone in the room. When we don't know what to expect, we tend to get anxious and nervous and may not come across in the best way. We're out of our comfort zones, so to speak. And if a person doesn't know what the expectations are, and in addition has difficulty processing verbal information or reading body language, difficulty sequencing steps and problem solving, then that causes heightened feelings of anxiety and frustration. And this at times may be the case for many individuals who experience autism spectrum disorders. This presentation will look at some of the elements that need to be considered for planning successful transitions. We're going to discuss what can be expected from the individual and how knowing and understanding expectations can reduce anxiety and aid in successful transitions during family, school, and community situations. To begin with, let's take a look at planning for transitions. This is essential. Basically, failure to plan is a plan for failure. Here are some common strategies and tools that can be considered. First, make transitions part of the routine, whether the transition is from place to place or activity to activity. Create visual schedules and mini-schedules that outline the steps to an activity or routine and have them readily available. Using clocks and timers help indicate the amount of time that will be spent in each situation or in completing each step. And organize activities that are closed-ended or have an obvious natural ending. For instance, ones that have a determined amount of parts, like asking a student to write 5 sentences instead of asking just for their thoughts or write me a page. Another one would be playing games that have an obvious ending, like using a magnetic fishing line to catch only 2 fish in the pretend ocean and not 2 fish out of 6 that are in the ocean. There are several strategies that can be built into a person's day and prepare them to transition, and in addition, let them know what's coming next. Depending upon a person's understanding of symbolic representation, it may be functional to hold or carry an actual object that will be used in the next activity or situation. This offers a concrete way to think about what am I doing next or where am I going next. Sometimes a picture of the next step or the next activity is enough. And it's always helpful to follow a challenging or non-preferred activity with an activity that is preferred, one that the person knows they can be successful at and maybe even have fun doing. These are common strategies and tools, or rather, these common strategies and tools work for most individuals with a spectrum disorder. And we'll look at them in more detail. But first, let's talk about how an individual's unique characteristics and personality affects planning and preparation for expectations and transitions. When planning for transitions and helping a person understand expectations, there are several things to consider. First of all, what are the person's strengths, and how can their strengths be tapped into for successful transitions? For instance, the working premise of this series is based on research that shows that people who experience an autism spectrum disorder are very successful in understanding visual information. Tapping into a more personal strength may involve something as specific as knowing that an individual is able to attend to a picture book for 5 minutes and can recognize details like 8 different objects when looking at items in a book or on a table. It's also important to recognize a person's personal preferences. Perhaps a person likes a certain kind of music, likes their laptop but not their iPad to work on, is okay with groups of 3, but 4 or more people may be unsettling. Perhaps a person likes riding on a 4-wheeler or a snow machine, but really dislikes riding in a truck. Another area to consider is how does a person perform in typical situations they encounter? Questions to ask include, is the person able to participate fully or partially or with some assistance? Does the person have the full range of skills needed to complete a task, or does he or she have only some of the skills? And for how long is a person able to participate? It may also be important to determine if the individual is happy with their level of performance. How certain contexts or environments affect a person is another area to consider. Does a person work best in an area that has indirect lighting? Or maybe they like to work under bright lights. Does a room have to be on the quiet side, or can some noise and movement be tolerated? Also consider a person's preference for activities. Maybe they like to get dressed before they eat breakfast, or maybe after breakfast. Perhaps they have a preference for a time of day to engage in certain activities. For instance, algebra is okay before lunch, but after lunch, well, not so much. Tailoring routines and events to reflect a person's unique characteristics can help create a situation that decreases anxiety and helps a person be more successful in transitioning and in feeling okay with expectations. So let's look at some specific tools and strategies that can be useful in helping people transition and understand expectations. And although these strategies are presented in certain contexts like family, school, and community, they're useful in all environments. Finding ways to include an individual in the planning process is a very strong strategy, and not only gets people to buy in to the situation, but it's empowering and helps build good self-esteem. So let's look at some ways to do this. One way to include a person with developmental challenges is to just get a simple yes or no input from them. Another idea is to put individuals in charge of making sure that family members have what they need when going on a trip or running errands. Checklists can be a really nice tool for preparing someone to what's coming next and for keeping them involved. This calendar might look familiar. We made one in session 2. Calendars are great for preparing someone for an upcoming event that may be challenging or just out of the ordinary. With the calendar, a person can have a long period of time to prepare for an event. For instance, the person can check the calendar daily, and each day can be crossed off, and it provides an opportunity to talk about the upcoming event and what to expect. Social stories can also help individuals understand expectations. On her website, Carol Gray, the developer of social stories, defines them as an individualized short story that describes a specific social situation from the student's perspective. Gray identifies considerations when developing social stories. This includes the reading level, the format, and the style. The student's reading level is very important to determining what your social story will look like. For students with lower reading levels, you may need to use a lot more illustrations in your stories. However, at any reading level, a social story uses concrete and easy to understand language. A social story should also incorporate a style and format that is motivating or reflects the interests of the person with ASD. The story should also be written in a relaxed and positive format. Social stories also use words like "I will try" instead of words like "I will." So this social story says, most people like to eat breakfast in the morning. Sometimes I eat breakfast before I wash and get dressed. Sometimes I eat breakfast after I wash and get dressed. I will try to get up at the time my parents tell me. I will try to learn to wash myself, get dressed, and eat breakfast. Then it is usually time to go to school. So this social story is written from the person's point of view and gives them strategies and lets them know what it is they're going to try to do. So even though it's about dressing, it ends with the idea that after I'm dressed, there's still something else that I can expect, and that's going to school. Power cards are another visual strategy that can be used successfully at home. And power cards are a visual aid that incorporates the child's special interest and includes routines, behavior expectations, and easy to understand language. Power cards were developed by Alyssa Gagnon. She had a daughter with autism who refused to do anything except sing songs from Sesame Street and talk about Big Bird. She wrote a story for her daughter Claudia titled, Big Bird Learns to Stay on Task. And she provided a card to go along with the story with a picture of Big Bird and simple instructions, and it was very successful. So let's take a look at what makes Power Cards successful. So using the idea of a hero or special interest really serves as a motivator. Usually people will tune in when their hero or special interest is mentioned. Also, they can be extremely non-threatening. It's just easier for people to buy into a scenario than to follow just a top-down command to be told to do something. And also, people like to be like their heroes. And we're more likely to do what our heroes suggest. So here's an example of a power card. Zorro in the bathroom. During his many adventures to help people in need, Zorro has found it necessary to stop and use the bathroom once in a while. He knows it is important to go when he needs to, and he doesn't wait for someone to ask him if he has to go. He knows that it is important for everyone to take care of their bathroom needs on their own. So Zorro would like you to consider 3 facts. When you're at home, don't wait for someone to ask if you need to go to the bathroom. Just go when you need to go. When you're at school, tell your teacher that you need to go to the bathroom. Try and go every time there's a scheduled break, even if you don't feel you need to. If you're away from home, tell an adult that you are with that you need to use the bathroom and have them show you where it is located. Zorro is proud of young men who can take care of their own bathroom needs. So, of course, social stories and power cards can be useful and very successful at home. And also, in the school setting, they can be very successful. But let's take a look now at some additional visual tools that help children transition between locations and activities. So checking in, where am I now? So this is a visual way to do roll call. When the student comes in, they move their picture from the home side to the school side, and that helps them understand the transition even a little more, that they've come from home and are now in school. Visual schedules are extremely successful, and it lets people know what their day is going to look like. And we talked about visual schedules way back at the beginning of the series. So you see in this one, as the individual moves through their day, they remove the picture and put it in the bag here in front of the schedule, letting them know that it's finished and that it's time to go and get the next symbol. Here's another visual schedule or daily schedule. And this one is using some time management ideas and has the clocks and times posted over here on the left side. And has some little tiny routines built into the times. So for instance here, I arrive, then I wash my hands, then I start writing. Photographic visual schedules are really helpful for children who are lower on the symbolic representational schedule. They're very concrete and show the situation, how it might actually look and these can be pictures of the individuals participating in those activities. Here's another photographic visual schedule using the time clock. And this one is also includes a few small routines within the activity time. Mini schedules are also a successful way to provide knowledge of what expectations are and to sequence out the steps. They can be, depending again on the person's symbolic level, can be from just using pictures to using words or words and pictures. Here's an example of a visual routine, and this guides a person through the steps of personal hygiene after they use the restroom. And this teaches expectations in the routine and shows them what's happening next. So you turn the water on first, wet your hands, get soap, rinse your hands, turn off the water, dry hands, and throw away the towel. And what's really convenient about these photographic visual aids is that you can actually take pictures of the person themselves doing the steps the right way. And then this routine ends with what is going to come next after personal hygiene is done. So again, preparing them for the transition and expectations. And visual aids can be really quick. Here's a little checklist just for the lunchtime that lists out the order and the sequence of what's going to happen during lunch and when what's going to indicate a transition back to the room, which is wait for the bell to ring and then go back to the room. And having a card like this in a notebook or in a pocket, a person can check and look it over several times before actually going to lunch, which will also aid in preparing them for that situation. Visual schedules and routines don't have to be fancy. They can almost be done on the fly if necessary. Of course, here's one that's set up for a person who can read. And if the person themselves is creating a schedule, that also keeps them involved in their day and in knowing right off the bat what to expect, what's coming next. Here's another example of a visual schedule using photographs. And then here is a picture of a central location for visual supports. So that's also another important aspect of using visual strategies, is having a place where students know that they can go and grab the strategy that they need. It's also important to keep visual strategies age appropriate. So here is a middle schooler's daily plan book, and inside utilizing what everyone else in school is using, which is the bell schedule, which is going to indicate what's coming next. And then they have a little outline inside their book as to what they should be doing inside their specific classes, right down to walking to class, going to your seat, and when the bell rings, gather belongings and walk to the next class and check the class schedule there. Here is the use of the calendar on a personal level, and in this example, person is counting the days off until Thanksgiving, where there will be a prolonged time off from school. So they're using this long-term strategy to prepare themselves for a change of routine. It's also important at times to let a person know who they're going to be meeting next and who they're going to be working with. So this idea incorporates the use of actual photographs of the different people that the individual interacts with throughout the day. So when they're going to, like in this case, the nurse, or say speech therapy or OT, they're handed this photograph that can be snapped on to their clothing if they want, or just carried in their hands. And that helps prepare them for who it is they're going to be interacting with next. Here's a nice little visual tool, the Go, Almost Done, and Stop board. This is actually the activity we're going to make during this session. And this shows a clear sequence and is a closed-ended way to complete an activity. So you start with the picture here at the Go stage, and then as time elapses, and it's really good to use a timer, a visual timer with this, that works really well, or as a teacher you can just kind of gauge what the activity level is in the room, and when you want to indicate to the student that reading or the activity is almost over, you can go over and move the picture down to almost done. And then this is a kind of warning to the student that they're going to have to start thinking about stopping, and you can even say that it's pretty much time to start thinking about stopping. You just have a couple minutes left, and you can show them the timer, and then move it from the almost done to the stop position when you have decided that it's time for the student to stop, or if the timer has run out. So again, this is the activity we're going to make this time. And here's a picture of the visual timer. So you pull this little lever down and you set it to whatever time you want, which shows the red, and then as the time lapses, then the red disappears. You could also just use a digital clock if a person knows how to tell time, and teaching time management skills can be very valuable. It's a way to really self-empower individuals to keep track of their own time limits. On this visual timer, you can see here this picture of the rocking chair. So this is another little visual tool where you put the picture of the activity right on the timer itself, then set the time, and then when the timer goes to 0, that person would take the picture of the rocking chair and go back over to their visual schedule, maybe put it in the plastic bag or wherever they're keeping the activities they've completed, and then take the next picture off the visual schedule. Here's a really quick and easy idea. So here the student is having computer time, and they need to share the computer, so they only have a certain amount of time on it with the little timer set here. So at each time interval predetermined by you, the teacher, you can go by and you can just drop down one segment of this torn paper. It's just a 8 by 11 piece of paper folded in half with one side torn into 3 segments. It's kind of like the Go Almost Done Stop board, in that it's just 3 steps to it that prepare for the transition. Then, as the person is more into their activity, but it's time to think about quitting, then you go and you fold down the next segment of paper, and you can see here that there's words on here that says go to, and then whatever the next activity when the computer time is ended and you fold down the segment, it'll tell the student where they need to go next. Now let's take a look at transitions and expectations within the community setting. In the community, it's really important to consider social appropriateness. For instance, we expect children to engage in age-appropriate activities. We also expect that a child or an older individual would use a visual tool that is appropriate to their age level as well. For instance, if a teenager is waiting in line at the movies, an aid that would help them wait would maybe, an expected one would be listening to music or watching a movie on an iPod or tossing a ball into the air. Here's a look at a couple of ideas that are age-appropriate and socially appropriate. So, for instance, if an individual is still at the level where they use a visual timer, these are available as a wristwatch and would be very appropriate for teens and older people. And if a person is capable of time management, telling time, well, a wristwatch is, of course, a tool that everybody uses. This idea here with the clippers and the water can and the trowel is an idea of like using miniature objects that a person can keep in their pocket to remind them of what they're doing and what steps are next. And then as each step is completed, that object can just be transferred to the other pocket. I also want to talk about story movies, which is another tool developed by Carol Gray with Mark Shelley. And I'd like to suggest that they present another strategy to help children understand expectations and therefore reduce anxiety. So we're going to take a look here at part of a clip that explains story movies.
Hello, I'm Mark Shelley, President of the Special Minds Foundation.
And I'm Carol Gray, President of the Gray Center for Social Learning and Understanding.
We'd like to give you a brief overview of the Story Movies Project based on social stories.
A social story is a short story written in a special style and format with a patient and reassuring quality. The first social stories were written on behalf of very young children with autism to help them understand some of the social situations that surround them. We quickly discovered that upon reviewing those stories, those children could respond more effectively to the situations that the stories described. The first stories were illustrated with very simple illustrations. Parents and professionals quickly found that this approach was highly successful with many children who needed help understanding social situations. Well, then I was approached by Mark.
And having used social stories for the last few years with my son Paul, who has Asperger's syndrome, who was such a visual learner, I couldn't help but start thinking, how much more effective could the stories be if they were illustrated with live action, short movies?
This was an exciting prospect because now social stories could really go to work using a form of illustration very close to the experience of a child, adolescent, or adult. For several years, we have used social stories to describe many of the statements and phrases that people use in everyday communication. With story movies, we have a new opportunity to translate those phrases and statements along with their intonation, gestures, facial expression, and context. In other words, a story movie interprets real life.
So even though in the clip that they were looking at some specific school-related activities and that these are commercially made, I think the whole idea of using video to help people understand expectations going out in the community ourselves and making our own little flip videos or whatever, and maybe using it in conjunction with the social story is a really good idea. So now we've come to the point in the presentation where we're going to start on our project, making our Go Almost Done stop board. So go ahead and get your materials ready, and we're going to take about 20 minutes to complete the first step in making the board. And I'm going to play the flip video that I have made to illustrate how we're going to do the board. So we're going to take about 20 minutes. We're going to show the video, and we're going to start making our transition boards. Okay, so the project for this evening's presentation is going to be the Go Almost Done and Stop board. And this is the one where you put the activity next to the top here, the Go button, which means that the individual can start the activity, and then almost done, and the stop. And this transition support works really well with the timer as well. You've been provided some templates that you can download from the website, and here's some pictures for the activities, and if these pictures don't fit your needs, feel free to draw your own, get some off the internet, out of a magazine, whatever works for you. So those are the activity ones that would come down the right side of this board. And you can also just use the traditional color them in and write the words, or we've also provided you some some pictures that are another way to represent Go Almost Done and Stop. So we have a racing theme, an Iditarod theme, and then just a symbolic theme. And then here is your template for the board. And we're going to start with this template this evening, and we're going to color in the circles green, yellow, and red. So I've got my markers here. And for some individuals, just having the colors may be enough. It may be symbolic enough for them to understand how to sequence through. This might even be a project that you want to make a couple times, and you could have the person you're supporting even help you make this project. So I'm going to go with the one of the racing motifs here for my pictures to put here. So I'm just going to cut them out. Okay, so I've chosen the racing motif to use for my Go Almost Done and Stop. And what I need to do now is I'll just line them up here, and I'm going to cut around them a little bit so that they fit in here. And some people may want to pay more attention to how neat it looks. My theory is that the details don't necessarily matter. It's the whole gist of it. So that looks pretty good. Fits in there pretty good. So go ahead, and we're going to take 15 minutes for everyone to do this, and then we'll get back to the next step. Okay, now we're ready to do the second step in making our Go Almost Done stop board. And in this step, we're actually going to glue the symbols, pictures down onto the template. And remember, if you want your template to be sturdier, go ahead and glue it onto a sturdier piece of cardboard. And then we're going to laminate the template with the symbols glued onto it. And then we're going to prepare it to either use Velcro or tape or whatever we're going to use to help pictures stick to the board. Okay, so now we are going to glue our pictures down into their spots here. This is all printed on cardstock, but of course, before we laminate, which is the next step, you can always, to make a sturdier board, go ahead and glue the whole piece of paper down to an old file folder, an old cereal box, and all that works pretty well too. So now I'm going to grab the laminator and we'll laminate these. Okay, so now we're going to laminate the board with the pictures glued on it. Would have been nice to have glued that to a sturdier piece of cardboard, but I'm not going to have to use that whole side. So I'm going to cut off the extra plastic here. So the next step would be to take sandpaper, and we're going to rough up an edge just close to each circle here on the right side of the circle. And that's where we're going to place our Velcro. And this, of course, just helps the Velcro stick better. Velcro here. And the soft side we place here, soft side stationary, so that'll be placed on those rough edges, or rough surface. the board is ready to receive the other pictures, so let's go ahead and take another 15-20 minutes to prepare the board to this stage, and then we'll get back with the final step. Now we're ready for the final step in making our board, and for this we're going to need the templates of the activity pictures. So feel free to use those, or you can draw your own or download your own images from the internet. We're going to cut out the pictures. We're going to laminate these picture symbols, and then we're going to rough up the back of the pictures and get them ready to use on the board. So we're going to take about 15 or 20 minutes to complete this step, and while you're working, here's another video clip that illustrates what we're doing. Alright, so this is our template for some activity pictures, and again, if these don't suit your needs, please feel free to draw your own, take your own pictures, download some from the internet. And what we're going to do in this step is we're going to cut out all of the pictures or just a few of the pictures, and I'll start doing that right now. My Velcro scissors don't really work so well. I think I'm going to stick with this bottom row. And when laminating, it just works best to laminate the pictures individually. The lamination just stays together better. And if you have contact paper or clear package tape, that would work really well for the lamination as well. So I'll bring that laminator back up here. Slide these pictures here under the plastic. Run through. So, then just cut the excess plastic off the pictures. And children really like to help with this part. It's kind of fun, especially when you get those scissors going and just slice down the line. We're going to now put the rough edge, or the rough side of the Velcro on the pictures we have here. But again, we're going to take the sandpaper and rough up the back of the pictures. So that they'll stick a lot better. The Velcro will stick a lot better to it. Piece here. put these just down to see how well they work individually, and to take a gauge as to where I want to cut this off. Just to make this a nice, easily held tool. So I now have 4 pictures I could use to help the person I'm supporting transition. So then if it was time to feed the dogs, put that there on the go and come by, set the timer for maybe 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes, whatever it takes, maybe 20, and go out, check again, indicate that it's almost done, and it's time to stop, and hopefully that's going to aid in the transition through that activity. And that's the final step to making the board, so go ahead and we'll take another 15 minutes and get our boards finished up. Okay, so we have made our go, almost done stop board. So are there any questions? If so, feel free to give us a call if you're listening via teleconference, or send an email. That's lbaker@cisa.org. And we hope that you found this presentation valuable. Next month's session is April 12th, and we're going to be looking at how to teach generalization by taking visual supports into the home and community settings. And the project for next month is a weight plan, and visual supports to go with the plan.